The body is always about balance. And a lot of times we will look at something the way the medical profession does. If you go to the doctor and you say, I have a pain in my knee, the doctor will x-ray your knee. They isolate a knee. When a friend of mine went to the doctors, there's a doctor that does nothing but from the ankle down. Doesn't even know anything about the knee, just from the ankle down. That's their specialty. So the body has been chopped up in little pieces. I think that's why the medical profession is failing, in part. We run like a well-oiled machine. Or, let's say this little company. This company is really successful. They have a boss who does the planning. They have a secretary. They have a daycare worker to watch the boss's baby, and they have a security officer. And them doing their job is very successful and runs very, very smoothly. If the daycare worker goes into a coma, which person in this group do you think will do the most complaining? The daycare worker? Anybody have an idea?
Yep, somebody said secretary.
Right, the secretary
Someone
in
said
this
the
case.
boss.
Well, the boss might a little bit, but mostly the secretary, because now she's doing her job plus another job. That's how it is with the body. For instance, let's say my thyroid gets really, really weak. I may see a problem with anxiety because my adrenal glands are trying to do its job plus take over the job of the thyroid. If the thyroid was doing its job, the adrenals would settle down. It wouldn't be all hyper. So this secretary is probably in hyper, anxious, excited, overworked, crabby, snappy. But she's not the problem. It's the daycare worker. But she's too whooped to complain. So whenever you do natural health, you don't just look at what the complaint is. You look at, okay, why is this complaining? Is it lacking something? Is it weak? Or has it taken over a job of something else that's not working well now? Does that make sense? So this is why we can do better. We can find the root of the problem and not just work on the symptom. Okay, so our body can only be in one of three states. It's either balanced when you're healthy, which doesn't usually last very long unless you really, really work at it. It can be hyper or hypo. This would be in a hyper state. This would be a hypo state. Okay, stress cells and organs will try to overcompensate for the extra load put on them. They're strong enough to complain. Chronic, and that's called an acute condition. Chronic conditions, usually the body becomes weak, comatose, and too weak to complain. It's also important to know this to let people understand. Whenever I first started being an herbalist, I thought I knew it all. Now I realize I know less now than I thought I knew then. Because I would just tell people, this is what you need to work on. And they'd call me up and they'll say, oh, remember you gave me that thing for my knees? Well, now my kidneys are aching me like crazy. It was the kidney that was letting the uric acid affect their knees. So whenever you find out the cause, the root of the problem, you need to let them know, because their kidney may be too weak to complain. But as you nourish it, all of a sudden their kidneys are going to hurt. because it's now no longer comatose. It's now closer to being balanced or acute, and it can complain. Some herbalists will say it gets worse before it gets better. What they really mean is you can cleanse, the body can get healthy enough, especially a chronic condition, get healthy enough that the body start kicking out those toxins so it can affect other parts of the body, or the tissue will get healthy enough that it'll start complaining. And that happens a lot. Usually, if someone has a decent constitution, within the first 6 weeks, if you give them the right herbs. So please, maybe learn from my mistakes. What I do now is if I see someone has a chronic condition, I will tell them, all right, your kidney or whatever part of the body it is that we found out was the weakest link, hopefully this will start aching or start complaining in the next 6 weeks. You might get diarrhea, you might have to urinate a lot, there might be a little blood in your urine or a little mucus in your urine, your knees might hurt you a little bit, whatever I need to tell them within 6 weeks. So call me up when you let me know when that happens. And I'll have people, rather than people call me up in 4 weeks and saying, I'm quitting this hurting, these herbs are killing my kidneys. I'll have people call me up and say, oh, you'll never believe this. It's only been 4 weeks and already I'm feeling that pain. And I'll say, well, good, just stay on that amount. We don't need to increase it. And they stick with it. Because whenever they start changing the balances of these, the body is going to react. If they're prepared for it and realize that it's a healing process, then they're excited. But if you do not give them that foundation, if you don't let them know that can happen, then they're going to quit and say herbs never work again.